Max Verstappen has been karting since he was 4 and been winning ever since. What was his driving style like and how has it developed over the years to the point where he's won 2 world championships? Well, Max was actually driving before he was 4. His dad put him on a quad bike. And that's a key thing here. Max's dad is Jos Verstappen, an ex-F1 driver, and his mum Sophie Kumpen, who karted with the likes of Jenson Button and Jarno Trulli. So he must have strong racing DNA, but also his dad brought him up around racing, both in the paddock of F1 tracks and at the karting circuit. So he was raised to be a winner.
He knew what went wrong in his career and we tried to do it better now. So he was trying to make a Verstappen 2.0 really.
And you can see that. In this clip, Max is 12 years old, racing in BNL karting series, and he was incredibly quick. But how exactly was he driving? The first thing to note is that these are karts. The driving style is going to need to suit what he's driving, so it's not going to be exactly the same as he drives a Formula 1 car. But there are some clues. Just watch this. Max starts a fair way back on the grid, but is absolutely unstoppable. And even at this early age, you can see just how aggressive he is. Look at that dive bomb. A little bit of contact, but that's kind of how it's done in karting. It is super aggressive, to be fair, but you have to be at this level of karting. He makes more moves and moves up the field, but as you get towards the front of the pack, the standard of drivers is higher. And of course, they are then harder to overtake. But Max still sends it. A little more contact this time, but still a fair move. Then he gets his head down and catches the pack in remarkable time, even deploying a little human DRS. Then this is the most Max move of the lot. He has the run, but is still a fair way back and dives on the brakes, braking too late, really. Just look at the understeer that he gets. But he's already compromised the other driver's racing line. He gets him back, but a lot of this is showing the other driver that you are coming through. And after a couple more corners, he gets the job done. You can see that even at 12 years old, Max is racing at a super high standard, but is still making moves and winning from the middle of the pack. And Max's karting career was remarkable, winning almost everything. He won 2 European championships against the likes of Charles Leclerc.
A sketchy turn by Leclerc hands over the keys of the second position to Max.
Then in the World Championships, he was incredible, often leading from lights to flag. And that is remarkable because in karting, it's really hard to pull away. You often have really tight trains of karts, meaning you can never rule out a dive bomb from a kart behind. And you can start to see some of the things we see in F1 now, such as Max rarely making mistakes and being able to deliver lap after lap at an incredible pace. So here he won the race and took the World Championship, which caught the eye of several race teams. So in 2014, Max made the move to Formula 3 with Van Amersfoort Racing. And this isn't typical. Normally drivers will go to F4 or Formula Renault before making the move to F3, but Max made the jump very quickly.
I think the perfect step for me to jump in a Formula 1 car. The car is a little bit underpowered, but it's I think perfect to get the perfect skill.
So now Max was still very young and up against some really talented drivers. Drivers like Antonio Giovinazzi, LMP2 driver Tom Blomqvist, IndyCar driver Felix Rosenqvist, and Formula E driver Jake Dennis. But his main rival was Esteban Ocon, who was also having an incredible junior career. That year in Spa, Max made one of the most incredible overtakes I've seen from him, a proper masterpiece. But speaking of which, we need to thank today's sponsor, Masterworks. Formula 1 cars might be priceless pieces of history, but for some fans and even global players like JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs, they can also be amazing investments. The logic is that cars like these can increase in value over time. However, it doesn't stop at cars. Fine art actually appreciated more than gold, real estate, and the S&P last time inflation was this high. Masterworks allows anyone to invest in contemporary art without having to spend millions of dollars. Masterworks just recently ticked over 682,000 users, and the results speak for themselves. Last year, Masterworks paid out over $25 million in net returns to its investors. Investment in art has doubled in the last year, and that's probably because art prices rose by 29% in 2022. Despite the global financial troubles. And that's more than fine wine, luxury watches, and even classic cars. So if you haven't signed up before, then you can still skip the waitlist and see what Masterworks has to offer by clicking the link in the description below. Now, as promised, that overtake. Look at this, Ocon passed him before Max outbraked him and stuck it around the outside of Leclerc. An incredibly bold move. There was so much that could go wrong here, but you can tell Max really backed himself to get the car stopped and make the move. You can also see just how intelligent Max is with his racing. Ocon made that move across to cover the inside, but he did it pretty late. Max knew that this would mean that Ocon would have to brake early, so he braked later, aiming at the outside line, and made it all the way past before the following left-hander. And it's easy to forget that at this moment he's still only 16 years old, and already showing just how ruthless he really is. A properly formidable racer. In Formula 1, Max is famous for his driving style, but also how he likes his car set up on the nose. This means that the balance of grip focuses around the front tyre, with the car usually running the rear quite high in order to put as much weight and therefore grip on the front of the car. This allows for a really fast turning and gives the car an incredible ability to pivot in the corner. It just goes where Max wants it to. However, many drivers just can't handle driving in this way. Gasly and Albon at Red Bull, but also Max's dad. Max sometimes races with his dad in GT cars, and this is what Jos said.
He thinks it's too oversteering.
I need the front more stiff.
And you can see this in this clip. It's Max testing a Formula Renault. Very similar, but slightly slower than an F3 car. Now, look at the steering wheel and see how Max isn't correcting massive slides, but he is constantly balancing the car right on the limit all the way through the corner. If another driver got in that car set up in that way, I can tell you that they probably wouldn't be quite as refined. Max is driving the car completely on the edge, but is incredibly smooth. If you just look at it again, you can see his incredible feel for the grip of the tyre and how he balances the car. He's dancing it through the corner. I've coached hundreds of drivers in the past, and when I first saw the steering wheel here, I was super impressed at how incredible his natural feel is. He just isn't thinking here, it's natural finesse, something that's very difficult to teach. Now, all of this means that Max, throughout his career, has driven a similar line through a corner. Drivers like Vettel and Schumacher V off a corner, turning the car hard in the mid-corner before straight-lining the exit. Many other drivers like Jenson Button or Ricciardo would drive a smoother and wider arc through the corner. But Max is somewhere in between. His setup allows him to carry incredible speed through the corner and get great exit speed. He balances the car so well on the brakes and on the entry to the corner that he manages to keep his minimum speed really high and get a great launch onto the following straight. This is a really difficult style to get right, and why I think many teammates can't match him. Anyway, later in that season, Max did something that caught the eye of every F1 boss, and it showed his natural feel even more.
When he started winning, of course, the others were interested, and I think every Formula One team from the top 5 were interested in him. Then it was clear we want him, and we want him in Formula One.
It was at the Norris Ring street track in the wet, super tricky conditions on a super tricky circuit. Max was leading in the dry and was absolutely rapid. But there was a red flag, and whilst the race was stopped, it absolutely poured down. Max had to lead the field away on a wet track, and this is where he really shone. When you're leading in the wet like this, you're the first one to arrive at each part of the newly wet track. And so you have to use your ability and your experience to take a best guess at how much grip there is available. It's actually easier being behind in these conditions because you're able to follow where the person in front of you brakes. But Max absolutely ran away, taking chunks of time out of the entire field.
Now Max Verstappen, who will take yet another win. The man is on an incredible charge in this Formula 3 European Championship. Max Verstappen, we're watching a real star in the making here.
And in the wet, he was around 1.5 to 2 seconds per lap quicker than anybody else in the field.
And I've always said this, the best drivers are also incredible in the wet. It's the hardest driving you do as a pro driver. The risks are higher, you have the most to compute, and it pushes your ability the hardest. This is where any flaw in your technique will show up really fast. Now, it would make sense that Max's technique in a really light and nimble F3 car wouldn't really translate to F1. However, it has. When he got to Red Bull, the driving style worked perfectly, as it aligned with Adrian Newey's style of designing a car. In the pre-2022 regulations, Red Bull ran a car with a lot of rake, and with the balance being on the front of the car. Exactly how Max likes to drive. However, as we know, the rules have changed since, with the new generation of cars liking to be flatter to the ground. So, to begin with, Max adapted, changing to a more smooth and rounded style. keeping the minimum speed up through the corner and keeping the car flatter for more downforce from the floor. But recently it seems that Red Bull have got the car to work with the more traditional Verstappen style. And we made a whole video about why that suits Max and doesn't suit Sergio. You should check that out here. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.